Hello, everybody. Glenn Marvin here from touchpointgroup.com, and welcome back to another Banking App Insights session. This one focusing on the US Tier 1 banks, and we're going to dig into PNC this month, where we're going to look at one of the fundamental features that's actually dragging their engaged customer score down and really should be prioritized to improve the user experience. That and just a quick look at Truist, Tony Patrick, who are sort of coming back into the trust frame. Really, those trust signals are coming back strong, aren't they?
They definitely are. Thank you, Glenn. So today, as Glenn mentioned, just covering off US Tier 1s, which we have US Bank, Capital One, PNC, and Truist. So I will jump straight in and look at our standard view to kick things off, which is looking at this view here, which is our engaged customer score. Now, there's a few of you who are familiar, but for those who aren't, the engaged customer score is looking at those customers who've given both a score and a comment. So those people, when we look at it that way, we actually remove those disengaged customers and we actually see real movement in the data. And so we actually see up and downs that represent real problems with your app rather than having things that are flattened out and I suppose vanilla to some extent that just go across time and don't change. So we can see real change as it happens down to the day if we need to. But one of the things I can see here is that obviously Truist with the merger of SunTrust and BB&T obviously had some problems. You're taking two different banking customer groups, joining them into a new entity, and it gradually sort of across time has actually improved. So we're sitting at the end of last year at around just above 2 towards 3. There was a bit of a spike there, but the gradual improvement we can see for Truist is very positive for them. So they're actually coming back into the realm of others. And while they haven't yet overtaken PNC, by the looks of it, they probably will next month because it's very close at this point. So well done to Truist and gaining that trust of that two customer groups coming into that one brand. But now I wanted to focus on PNC because it's one brand that should be doing very well, but it has this inconsistency problem where we can see there in October 2021 there was a bit of a dip. We also saw in March there was a bit of a dip as well. But even if that dip wasn't there, the consistency, like even then, it's still sitting below the likes of Capital One, sitting just above it, and the gap would be consistent at around a point, 0.4, 0.5, somewhere there. At the moment, currently, PNC is at 3.7, and Capital One is 4.3, so a 0.6 gap there for them to close. But let's have a look though at what might be going on with them and how they can actually improve. So one of the first views we'd like to look at is the frequency of these problems across what we call our SURF analysis. So what this looks at is around security and authentication, usability, reliability, and functionality. It covers our SURF, our 4 pillars of SURF. And because these are pain points, they're problems, you want to keep these scores, the frequency of this, down to a minimum. And we can see there the Capital One is doing that to some extent. In some of these areas like security and authentication, only 1.6% of customers across Q2 actually mentioned something about an issue with authentication, whereas for PNC, it was around 5.8%. But what I want to focus on today is this sort of features area. So it's 2.8% compared to 8. So this is the highest one we've got for PNC, this sort of features and functionality. And so that seems to be an issue that's coming through for PNC. Now, one of the things we can look at here is what's the impact on the score of these particular topics. So we can see the frequency of those scores, but how much is it influencing the score across that quarter? So I can look at this measure called contribution. And what I can see here is that this features and functionality area for PNC is dragging their score back by about 0.2. So in reality, if their score is sitting at 3.7 at the moment, if they fix this, or at least got it to the level that we have of Capital One, it could go up by about 0.2. They could get up to about 3.9 just on this area alone. Now, I'm not going to focus on every other area here, but again, they can also gain incremental value by looking at these other areas as well. But today we'll focus on this features and functionality area because that's really interesting about what we can actually do to improve what's happening there. So let me jump in to have a look at the detail underneath that. So what do we talk about in there? So here we're looking at, I'm just focusing now on topics. So these are topics around checking your account balance, depositing a check. So these aren't negative or positive. I've just jumped into these topics in their own right. But how we can see, though, how you're performing is look at the score. So, for example, the very first one is a very basic functionality of a mobile app, which is probably the very first thing you want to be doing is checking your account balance. And the score, when people talk about that, when Capital One customers talk about that, the average score is 3.9. When PNC customers talk about this, the average score is 2.1. So clearly a gap there and a big problem. The other one where the big gap is monitoring account activity. Obviously, the first one about checking your account balances and monitoring account activity are connected, and we get similar scores there. So for Capital One customers, this isn't really causing a major issue for them. It's reasonably good from that perspective. But PNC, it's an issue. Let's jump in and have a look, though. What types of issues are PNC customers having? Let's go in for this very, very basic functionality. What I'll do, I'll focus this, because this topic here about checking account balance is just a broad topic. It doesn't look at anything negative or positive. What I can do, though, is actually look at those who are having an issue, because clearly some are if the average score is 2.1. So this very first person, for example, who is using 4.27 of the Android app for PNC, they're saying they can see their balance, but they can't get to see withdrawals. That's a problem. Always has issues and never shows accurate balances. This person here, the app is usually down or the balance is unavailable at all times of the day. Obviously, a clearly frustrated customer for something that should be a very core functionality of a mobile app for banking. And even this person here, they can't keep track of their active balances, and even here, they want to actually see an up-to-date balance, which they can't seem to get with PNC. So clearly issues going on there with PNC. But let's have a look at one layer deeper on that and just have a look at how this has trended across time. So what I can have a look at here is this is looking at this checking account balance via the app and what the score has been across time. So if we look back into up until August last year, we can see the average score was sitting at 3 or above. So very nice. It's sort of going along. There's some issues for customers, but not a major one. When we hit those September of last year, September 2021, we start to go below 3, and it has not gone above 3 since then. And in fact, it's only gone above 2.5 a couple of times. In general, it's sitting below 2. So clearly problems across time that haven't been addressed for the past year. If we compare that, so have in your mind this above 3 is probably a nice level. Let's have a look at what this same one looks like. I'll just look at this for the comparison here of Capital One. And so what have they been doing? So what we can see with them is that even the lowest score is sitting at about 3.5. So even when the customers are the unhappiest, it's probably the highest it's ever been for PNC. So clearly, Capital One had this under control, but PNC have an issue that they haven't addressed over the past year for such a basic functionality. So something clear for them to focus on right away.
Absolutely, Tony, and something that any product manager should and would be looking at if they had that data in front of them. So thanks for that. If you want to have a look in a little more depth at your banking app's performance, feel free to sing out, and we will see you next month with a whole bunch more insights. Have a great day.